The morning rush hour pressed in tight on the city's aging bus, the air thick with the scent of coffee and stale breath. Elizabeth stood near the door, one hand gripping the metal pole, the other clutching her leather briefcase. Ash blonde hair caught the weak sunlight filtering through the grimy windows, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd like a predator on alert. She was used to this, the crush of commuters, the jostling, the occasional elbow or accidental shove. But when a rough hand slid too close to her hip, lingering just a second too long, Elizabeth's eyes narrowed instantly. "Excuse me," she said, voice low but deadly calm, as the hand attempted a quick, brazen grab. The man froze, smirking, thinking he'd caught her off guard. Big mistake. Elizabeth's grip tightened on the pole, and without missing a beat, she pivoted, pressing her body just enough to pin his hand against her side. "You must have mistaken me for someone who puts up with that," she said smoothly, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Here's a tip. Keep your hands to yourself, or I'll make sure you regret it." The man's smirk faltered, eyes flickering with a mix of surprise and fear. She leaned closer, lips barely moving. "Try it again, and I won't be so polite." The bus lurched, and as the crowd shifted, the man quickly withdrew his hand, retreating into the throng like a defeated pup. Elizabeth smirked, adjusting her coat with practiced ease. In her world, you didn't just survive. You dominated. The bus hissed to a halt at the curb, and Elizabeth stepped off with the confidence of a woman who owned every square inch of pavement she walked on. Her heels clicked sharply against the concrete, each step deliberate. The cold city wind tugged at the hem of her tailored coat, but she didn't flinch. She liked the bite of it, a small reminder that the world still had edges. Ahead, her office building loomed, glass, steel, and ambition. It was a modern tower of corporate power, home to ambitious executives and the sharks that circled them. Elizabeth wasn't just swimming in those waters. She was the one they whispered about in the elevators. As she walked into the lobby, the security guard gave her a respectful nod. "Morning, Miss Kane," he said. "Morning, Paul," she replied, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She wasn't unfriendly, just efficient. Warmth was reserved for those who deserved it. She headed toward the bank of elevators, ignoring the man who tried to cut in front of her. She simply stepped into his path, gave him a look, and he backed off without a word. The elevator doors slid open with a chime. Inside, her reflection stared back from the mirrored wall. Ash blonde hair perfectly in place, lips glossed with muted confidence, and blue eyes that said, "I dare you." She stood in silence as more passengers joined, filling the space with muted conversations and subtle tension. On the 21st floor, she stepped out without looking back, the door hissing shut behind her like a sealed deal. Her assistant, a nervous intern with good instincts and poor posture, jumped up as she entered. "Good morning, Ms. Kane. The board meetings are in 30 minutes. They moved it up and, the client from Solvix is waiting in the lounge." "Of course they are," Elizabeth said coolly, shedding her coat in one graceful motion and tossing it on the rack. "Tell the Solvix rep I'll be with them in 10, and have coffee brought in. Real coffee. Not that beige water they keep pushing on the interns." "Yes, ma'am." She turned on her heel, heading toward her office. A corner space with wall-to-wall windows and a view that made junior execs seethe with envy. Her heels echoed across the polished floors as she entered and closed the door behind her. Finally alone, Elizabeth exhaled. But instead of relaxing, her spine straightened. Her wolf stirred, not in rage this time, but with quiet warning. A ripple of something old and feral crawled across her skin, a whisper from the wild. Something was coming, and she had a feeling it wasn't from Solvix. The boardroom was sleek, cold, and intentionally intimidating. All steel lines and glass surfaces, like a mausoleum for bad decisions. Executives filled the seats around the oval table, most of them in dark suits and practiced smiles. A few glanced up as Elizabeth entered, some curious, some cautious. One or two are still foolish enough to underestimate her. They'd learn. "Gentlemen," Elizabeth greeted, her tone warm as frostbite. "And Cynthia," she added with a small, genuine nod to the lone woman 3 chairs down. The man at the head of the table, Gerald Markham, regional director and eternal mansplainer, gave her a tight smile. "Miss Kane, lovely of you to join us. I trust you've had time to review the Solvix acquisition proposal?" Elizabeth slid into her seat with unbothered grace, crossing one leg over the other and placing her file on the table. "I did, and I have questions. Specifically, whether Solvix intends to offer innovation or just overpriced redundancy wrapped in buzzwords." A few brows lifted. One man choked softly into his coffee. Gerald cleared his throat. "I think you'll find they've projected an aggressive trajectory into tech markets." She cut him off with a raise of her brow. "Yes, I've seen their aggressive trajectory. It's built on smoke and interns who can barely code. The entire proposal hinges on tech integration that doesn't exist yet, funded by capital they haven't secured." "Tell me, Gerald, is it optimism or just poor due diligence?" The room fell quiet. Cynthia bit back a smile. Gerald's jaw flexed. "Elizabeth, perhaps you'd like to present your alternate view? I thought you'd never ask." She reached into her folder and pulled out a sleek stack of revised projections. "You'll find a side-by-side of their pitch next to actual market data. Spoiler alert, they're about as scalable as a cardboard canoe." A stifled chuckle came from the junior exec at the far end of the table until Gerald glared at him into silence. Elizabeth stood, walking to the monitor, and tapped to bring up her presentation. Her voice was clear, her pace deliberate, her points surgical. Every sentence had weight, every pause intentional. She wasn't just smart, she was lethal. "I suggest we table the Solvix proposal until they can demonstrate a working prototype and viable revenue stream. Otherwise, we're investing in vapor. And I don't know about you," she turned back to face them, "but I prefer my deals less imaginary." Silence. Then Cynthia, ever cool and methodical, said, "I support that recommendation." One by one, the men followed, some grudgingly, some with awe poorly hidden behind their glasses. Gerald nodded stiffly. "Very well. We'll revisit once Solvix can offer clarity." Elizabeth sat back down, smiling sharply. "Clarity, that's the word." As the meeting adjourned, one of the newer VPs leaned in, eyes wide. "You were incredible. That was, honestly, brutal." She arched a brow, gathering her files. "It's not brutal. It's called knowing your worth. You should try it sometime." Then she swept from the room like a storm in stilettos, her scent leaving a trace of jasmine and danger. But as she stepped back into her office, something in her pulse shifted. A soft ache bloomed in her chest, primal, ancient. The wolf stirred again. "Home," it whispered. "It's time. Another summons." Elizabeth tossed the sleek white envelope onto her desk, unread. The seal, deep crimson wax stamped with the crescent moon, cracked slightly from the force. She didn't care. She didn't need to open it. She knew what it said. She knew who it was from. Her wolf snarled low inside her, pacing restlessly at the back of her mind, but Elizabeth pushed the sound aside like static. That world was behind her. She turned her attention to the message blinking on her phone. "See me before you leave today. Clark." Clark Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings. Visionary, billionaire, the absolute king of the corporate jungle. And, as of this morning, clearly impressed. Later that evening, the private marina glittered with fairy lights and champagne dreams. Elizabeth's heels clicked softly against the polished wood dock as she approached the yacht. A sleek, opulent thing that looked like it could outrun a small hurricane and host a black tie gala at the same time. Clark stood at the boarding ramp, tuxedo crisp, drink in hand. He smiled when he saw her. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Wasn't sure you'd show." She gave him that half smile, the one that looked polite until you realized it wasn't. "You invite me onto a $100 million yacht filled with free champagne and influential egos in silk dresses. I'd be rude not to." He laughed, offering his arm. "Come. Let me introduce you to some people worth knowing." Inside, the yacht was a different world. Glittering chandeliers, soft jazz, and an ocean of polished wealth. Celebrities lounged with crafted carelessness, tech moguls sipped scotch with quiet dominance, and models moved through the space like walking perfume ads. Elizabeth didn't flinch. This world was hers now, and unlike the pack, there were rules here. And she was very good at playing by them, and bending them when necessary. Clark introduced her to a few key players, a luxury hotel chain heir, a fintech disruptor, and a woman who practically owned half of Europe's designer handbag market. Elizabeth handled them all with graceful confidence, dropping comments sharp enough to impress without ever tipping into arrogance. One of the women leaned closer during a toast. "You're new, aren't you? I mean, in this circle." Elizabeth smiled, raising her glass. "Just hard to forget." Laughter followed. She charmed, sparred, and triumphed. But even as the party shimmered around her, something tugged at the edge of her mind. That envelope, the weight of it, the call she hadn't answered. She stepped away for air, heels silent now against the deck as she moved toward the edge of the boat. The sea stretched endlessly into blackness, the night air thick with salt and secrets. For a moment, the wind shifted, and there it was, distant, impossibly far, but unmistakable. A howl, not the sound of a dog, not even a wild wolf. A call meant only for one of their kind. Elizabeth's fingers curled around the polished railing, knuckles white. Her wolf rose in her chest like smoke, not angry, not afraid, just waiting. "Not tonight," she whispered to herself. "Never." But the wind didn't care what she whispered, and neither did the moon. The yacht glittered in the distance, fading into the night as Elizabeth stepped into the sleek black car waiting for her. The driver said nothing. He didn't need to. Beside her, he sat. The man with the crooked smile and eyes like midnight whiskey. She hadn't even caught his full name, only that it tasted smooth when he said it. Adrian. They'd circled each other at the party like twin predators pretending to play nice. His suit tailored, his grin confident, his presence magnetic. They'd shared 3 drinks, 6 flirtatious insults, and one very deliberate brush of fingers as he handed her a glass of something golden. Now, his thigh brushed hers in the back seat, and neither of them apologized for it. Elizabeth's cabin was perched just beyond the city limits, where the air grew cleaner and the woods crept closer. From the outside, it looked like a modern take on a hunting lodge. All dark timber, steel edges, and panoramic windows. Not exactly subtle, but that wasn't the point. Inside, it opened into a wide, open-plan space. High ceilings with exposed beams stretched over a polished concrete floor. a charcoal gray sectional wrapped around a glass fireplace that flickered like bottled firelight. Her kitchen gleamed with matte black appliances and soft gold fixtures. Sleek. Curated. Like her. Adrian stepped inside and gave a low, appreciative whistle. "This is not what I expected." Elizabeth arched a brow as she dropped her keys on the entry table. "What were you expecting? A shoebox in the city with peeling walls and leftover Thai food?" He smirked. "I was picturing something colder. Less warm." She stepped toward the kitchen, heels clicking softly across the floor. "I keep my claws hidden, not my taste." He followed, pouring 2 fingers of whiskey from the bar cart near the wall. "So what's the story, Elizabeth Kane?" he asked, handing her the glass. "Where'd a woman like you learn to command a room full of men without raising her voice?" She took the glass, sipping slowly. Trial by fire, and a refusal to play dumb to make anyone feel smart. Adrian laughed, low, genuine. "You're dangerous." She stepped closer, toe to toe now, her voice velvet and edged. "You have no idea." Their lips met with the urgency of 2 people who didn't believe in consequences. His hand slid to her waist, but she was the one who guided them toward the couch, the whiskey glass abandoned on the counter without a second thought. The room was bathed in warm light from the fire and soft glow from under-cabinet LEDs. Outside, the woods were silent, watching. Inside, Elizabeth silenced the part of her that twitched at the moonlight streaming through the high windows. Just one night. Just a man. Not a mate. Not the pack. Not the past. Adrian kissed like he knew how to make women forget themselves. But Elizabeth, even half drunk on whiskey and heat, never forgot who she was. Still, for tonight, she allowed herself this small rebellion. The wild part of her, the wolf just beneath her skin, growled softly in approval. But even in pleasure, even in surrender, it watched. Because something inside her whispered, "He smells wrong." The whiskey burned smooth and slow down her throat, but it was Adrian's mouth that truly lit the fire. He kissed her like a man starved. All heat and hands, the careful charm he wore at the party now stripped away like his jacket, which lay forgotten on the floor. Elizabeth arched beneath him on the couch, the velvet of her blouse bunched beneath his touch, her skin hot against the cool air of the cabin. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside, breath tangled with desire. Adrian's hand slid beneath her blouse, palm pressed to the soft curve of her waist. "God, you feel," he murmured, voice low and rough against her throat. "You're not like the others." Elizabeth smiled against his jaw. "Correct, I'm better." He growled softly in response, teeth grazing her collarbone. Almost playful. Almost. Her wolf stirred, tail flicking with sudden wariness. Not at the act, not at the pleasure, but at something beneath it. Something off. Faint. Elizabeth pulled him tighter, guiding him closer, deeper. And then, like a blade slicing through silk, a shrill buzz cut through the moment. Adrian froze, breath catching against her chest. "Let it ring," she murmured, not missing a beat, but he was already pulling away, fumbling for his phone. He didn't look at her, didn't explain, didn't hesitate before answering. "Yeah?" His voice dropped, suddenly clipped. No, I'm still out. I told you it was a late one. No, don't wait up." Elizabeth sat up slowly, the fog of lust cooling like embers doused in ice water. She didn't need to ask. She heard her. The voice on the other end, faint but crystal clear to Elizabeth's not-so-human hearing, wasn't a friend, or a colleague, or a sister. It was a wife. "I just miss you," the woman said, her voice soft and worried. "You said this weekend was for us." A pause. A soft shuffle of fabric as Elizabeth stood, smoothing her blouse, her expression unreadable. Adrian turned, blinking when he realized she was no longer lying beneath him. "Hey," she held up her hand. "Don't." He opened his mouth, but she was already walking toward the kitchen, calm, composed, livid. "You didn't mention a wife," she said, voice like glass barely keeping from shattering. "I didn't think it mattered," he said quickly, running a hand through his hair. Tonight, it didn't mean anything." Elizabeth turned, eyes glowing faintly in the dim cabin light, not with tears, with fury. "Exactly," she said, the words a whisper that cut like claws. "It meant nothing." He stepped toward her. "Come on, don't be like this. It was just fun," she finished for him, tone dripping venom. "A distraction from your life? Your lies?" Adrian hesitated. That was all she needed. "Get out!" He tried to say something else, but her expression made it clear, another word, and he might not leave with his dignity intact, or his kneecaps. The door slammed behind him a moment later. Silence returned to the cabin, heavy, echoing. Elizabeth stood there for a moment, the firelight flickering across her face. Then she laughed. Once. Sharp. Bitter. "Men," she muttered, turning back toward her untouched glass of whiskey. "Still not worth the scent they carry." But beneath the bitterness, something else clawed at her gut. Not because he lied, not because he was married, but because for one brief moment, she'd let herself want. And worse, she'd let herself hope. And that was far more dangerous than any man. The door slammed shut behind him, and with it, the last trace of his scent faded into the night. Elizabeth stood at the edge of her living room, arms folded across her chest, gaze fixed on nothing in particular. The fire had dimmed to a soft glow, the kind that barely warmed a room. Outside, the trees whispered, branches tapping the glass like patient fingers. She could feel her wolf pacing beneath her skin, restless, agitated. Not because of Adrian. That had been a misstep, yes, but not a surprise. No, it was something older, deeper. Home. That damned letter. She crossed to the window, fingers brushing along the dark wood trim, eyes catching the moonlight slanting through the trees. "You don't belong here." The thought drifted uninvited from the voice of her past, from the elders, from the pack that once wrapped around her like a second skin. Protective, possessive, proud. But they never understood her. Not really. She didn't leave because she was angry. She didn't leave because of a fight. She left because it wasn't enough. They had tried to shape her. The pack taught obedience cloaked in loyalty, tradition worn like shackles, mates chosen by fate, not by love. Roles are assigned by bloodline and birth order. Elizabeth had always wanted more. More than moonlit rituals and run-with-the-pack nights. More than the expectation to settle down with a strong male and produce pups. It was a civic duty. She had ambitions, sharp ones, ideas that didn't fit into the pack's hierarchy, and a tongue that got her into too much trouble to stay quiet, or stay home. The day she walked away, she hadn't even shifted. She'd boarded a plane in jeans and a leather jacket, one bag slung over her shoulder, and never looked back. And gods, it had hurt, leaving them, her brother, her mother, the scent of pine after a hunt, the freedom of her paws hitting the forest floor under a full moon. But it was worth it. Now she had this, her space, her rules, her hard-won reputation. She wasn't some alpha's prize or some elder's pride. She was Elizabeth Kane, and she had built this life. No one handed it to her, and no, a howling letter dipped in red wax was going to tear it down. The wind shifted outside again, and something primal inside her stirred. A pull that twisted just behind her ribs. Her wolf, always patient, always watching. The wind shifted outside again, and something primal inside her stirred. A pull that twisted just behind her ribs. Her wolf, always patient, always watching. "You miss it," she whispered into the glass. "Don't you?" A pulse of energy bloomed beneath her skin in response. Not a yes, not a no, just hunger. For the forest, the freedom, for the blood that called her one of its own. She turned away. "You'll have to keep missing it," she said to the silence, "because I'm not going back." And she meant it, didn't she? Monday morning, Elizabeth Kane was fire in heels. She stepped into the office like a storm wrapped in silk, sleek navy trousers, a tailored white blouse, and a coat that fluttered behind her like a banner. Phones were picked up faster, chairs straightened. Even the elevator seemed to open quicker when she approached. Her assistant, Grace, barely had time to catch up. "You've got strategy at 10, then quarterly with legal at..." "Push legal by 15. Tell them if they whine they can keep billing me while I'm walking." Grace blinked, then nodded and vanished, high heels echoing in retreat. Elizabeth strode into the glass conference room, her expression carved from marble, voice like a scalpel as she dismantled projections, elevated ideas, and corrected a board member without ever raising her tone. By 11:30, the office was collectively exhausted. She, however, was just getting started. Back in her private office, she kicked off her heels beneath the desk, cracked open a bottle of sparkling water, and opened the latest merger brief. Then, a knock. Grace entered with a curious look and a massive bouquet in her hands. Roses, wildflowers, lavender, and lilies, Elizabeth murmured before she could stop herself. Grace set the bouquet on the desk like it might explode. "No card on the outside. Just this." A sealed cream envelope. Elizabeth scowled. "If that's from Adrian, I swear to God." She snatched the envelope, ready to shred it without a second glance, but her fingers froze halfway. Written across the front, in looping familiar script, "Lily." Her breath caught in her throat. No one here called her that. Only one place in the world did. She slipped her finger beneath the seal, heart beating a little faster, not with excitement. With a warning. The note inside was short. No signature, no threats, just 4 lines. "The forest misses you. The pack watches still. You may run, Lily, but the moon always finds her own." Her mouth tightened. She folded the letter once, precisely, and slid it back into the envelope. Then she stood. The bouquet toppled into the bin with a single, controlled sweep of her arm. The lilies, still dewy and fragrant, fell face down in the trash. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, but the skin at the back of her neck was crawling. They'd reached out, not with rage, not with orders, with a reminder. They still knew her, still watched, still called her Lily, the name she buried when she became Elizabeth. She sank back into her chair, hands pressed together. Fine. They wanted her attention. They had it. But she'd be damned if she'd go crawling back to the forest with her tail between her legs. The moon might always find her own. But Elizabeth Kane wasn't theirs anymore. 3 weeks. 3 bloody weeks of unopened letters, of flowers with meaning she refused to acknowledge, of ghost-scented memories and words written with too familiar hands. Elizabeth had considered leaving, really considered it. A new name, a new city, maybe even a new country. She could burn it all down and rebuild from the ashes like she'd done once before. But why the hell should she be the one to run? She built this life, with blood, with sweat, with every hard-earned victory in a boardroom filled with men who underestimated her, feared her, and learned to respect her. She wouldn't let anyone, not a pack, not a wolf, not even an alpha, take it from her. So she did what she did best. She channeled the storm into her work. Projects were finished ahead of schedule. Budgets came under cost. Teams were reorganized with military efficiency. And more than one arrogant executive left her office looking pale and confused, wondering how she'd stripped their ideas down to nothing with a smile and a sentence. Elizabeth Kane was at her sharpest when angry, but rage, no matter how finely dressed, still burned. It was late when she finally made it back to the cabin. The moon hung low over the treetops, shrouded in thin clouds like a voyeur hiding its face. She stepped out of her car, heels clicking softly on the stone path leading to her front door. The woods were silent. Still. Too still. Inside, everything was dark. Not a single motion light flickered. Not the hallway sensor. Not the warm underglow in the kitchen she always left on. Her hand hovered over the keypad. She already knew. He was here. Her nostrils flared, catching it, that faint charged scent of fur and cold steel. Alpha musk layered with forest and dominance. Her pulse spiked, but she didn't flinch, didn't back away. She typed in her code. The door slid open. Silence met her like an old lover. She stepped in, cool and calm, setting her keys down with deliberate grace. Then she spoke into the darkness. "I hope you're not expecting an apology." From the shadows of her living room, a chair creaked. Then a voice, deep, gravel-edged, and patient, answered, "You kept me waiting, Lily." Her spine snapped straight. Only the pack called her that. And only one man would dare speak it like that, like it was still his right to name her. She flicked on the light. He was sitting in her armchair like he owned it, broad-shouldered, relaxed, but radiating a quiet violence that cracked through the air like a coming storm. Tousled dark blonde hair, gold eyes catching the light, power draped over him like a second skin. She hadn't seen him in years. Not since he was a brash, dangerous second in line with a sharp tongue and the potential to be everything his father wasn't. Now, he wasn't just potential anymore. He was the alpha, and he had come for her. She crossed her arms. "Get out." A pause. His jaw clenched once, but he smiled. It wasn't friendly. "I've given you time, letters, warnings, even patience." "I didn't ask for any of that," she snapped. "No," he said, standing slowly, like a predator who already knew the chase was over. "You asked for defiance, and now I've come to collect." Her wolf bristled, teeth bared beneath her skin, but Elizabeth didn't move, didn't flinch. She stared him down, lips curled in disdain. "You don't get to collect me," she said. "I'm not part of your pack. I'm not your problem." "You're mine," he said, voice soft, dangerous. "You always were." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think you can come here, break into my home, and drag me back like some lost mutt?" "I don't think," Ronan said, stepping close enough that the air between them shimmered with tension. "I know. The ascension is happening with or without you. But your absence, your defiance, it's a stain. On me. On the legacy." "And what?" she asked, eyes burning. "Dragging me back makes it all go away? It reclaims what's mine." That word again. Mine. Her breath hitched, not from fear, from fury. "You're not my alpha, Ronan," she whispered. But her wolf shivered. And in that split second, they both knew. It wasn't that simple anymore. "You're not my alpha," Elizabeth said again, voice low and laced with venom. Ronan's eyes flashed gold. You keep saying that like it makes a difference. She moved first, fast, without warning, catching him with a sharp elbow to the ribs and a hook toward his jaw. He deflected it, barely, but she pressed in, aiming for his throat. You think you can walk in here and play Wolf King, she growled, fists flying. This isn't the Packlands, and I'm not your obedient little He caught her wrist mid-swing and twisted, but Elizabeth was already shifting her weight, slamming her knee into his thigh and yanking free with a snarl. Her body moved like liquid steel, graceful, trained, feral. Ronan stumbled back, just enough for her to grin. Ah, she purred, circling him. Not as fast as I remember. Getting soft with all that alpha luxury? Ronan straightened, cracking his neck. Still faster than you, Lily. Call me that again, she hissed, lunging. They crashed into the coffee table, shattering it, claws raking across skin that hadn't shifted yet, but already threatened to. Her nails sliced through his shirt. His fingers tangled in her hair and yanked her back, hard. She slammed her elbow into his stomach and flipped him over her shoulder, right into the stone fireplace. His grunt echoed off the walls, but when he looked up, his smile was wolfish. Still scrappy. I missed that. She crouched, breathing hard, blood on her lip. You missed getting your ass handed to you? He surged forward. This time, he was faster. He ducked her next strike, grabbed her waist, and slammed her into the hardwood floor. Before she could twist out from under him, he straddled her hips, one forearm pressing her shoulders down, the other catching both wrists in a brutal grip above her head. She bucked, teeth bared. Get off! His face hovered inches from hers, sweat, blood, breathless heat. You think I wanted to come here? He growled. To drag you back like some wild dog? Then leave, she spat. Go crawl back to your precious pack and tell them the big bad alpha couldn't handle one runaway bitch. His grip tightened. His lips curled. You're part of this, whether you like it or not. The blood, the bond. It doesn't just disappear. She turned her head, snarling. You don't own me. Ronan exhaled, the air between them heavy with fire and fury. Then his voice dropped, deeper, darker, laced with the one thing she hadn't heard in years. Command. Elizabeth Kane, I invoke the Alpha's right. You will return with me. You will obey. The words crashed into her like thunder through her bones. Her muscles trembled. Her wolf writhed, ears pinned, tail tucked beneath. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But the command wrapped around her like chains of fire. She gasped, her whole body locked beneath his. Ronan watched her, his expression taut with something close to regret, but not enough to stop. You don't get to run anymore, he said. The moon called you back, and I'm here to answer. She shook her head, defiant even through clenched teeth. You can force my body, Ronan, but my loyalty? You'll have to earn that. His jaw tightened. Then he leaned closer, his voice a breath on her skin. Then fight me, Lily. All the way home.